You'd think that living without alarm schedules or emails would mean sleeping in. But I'm your bedtime historian, and in the Stone Age sunrise wasn't optional. It was the soundtrack to survival. Every rustle in the brush, every flicker of morning light could mean food danger. Or just a neighbor stretching too loudly. Smoke still clings to your hair from last night's fire. Ash smudges your fingertips. The first sounds are soft chirps, groans afoot, brushing against dry moss. Someone yawns in the dark. Someone else sneezes into a bundle of fur. Sleep once shared and tangled like vines begins to loosen its hold. You don't need a clock. You have the birds. The same calls echo each morning, familiar as breath. As light slowly spills across the sleeping circle, bodies begin to move. You join them rising not by habit, but by instinct. If stories like this feel more reliable than your digital calendar, maybe tap, like, and subscribe. Don't worry, I'll still be here quietly, even if the sun isn't. If you're listening in a place that doesn't have birdsong, I'm curious what wakes you up now. Dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The sky's pink edge is barely visible beyond the trees, but already the air feels different, cooler, expectant. You're not alone in noticing. Around you, others stir on fur-lined mats, rubbing their eyes with soot-darkened fingers. The fire in the pit has shrunk to embers, but no one rushes. Mornings come gently here. Your muscles ache, but not unpleasantly. It's the ache of having slept in a pile, of having shared warmth and dreams. Someone mumbles something about a fox spirit. Another laughs sleepily. Dreams are treated like weather. You notice them, maybe share them, but no one thinks they mean more than they do. Unless they do. Ash swirls lazily in the first breeze. The scent is sharp, almost sweet and familiar, burnt oak-wet moss, something oily that no one remembers throwing in. Your hands brush against a flint flake near your bedding. You wonder if it fell from someone's pouch in the night, or from their dream. Nearby, a child with tangled hair makes a game of stretching arms, wiggling like branches in wind. An older woman mimics the motion, exaggeratedly drawing a sleepy giggle. You smile. There's no schedule, no school run. But there is rhythm, first light, first laugh, first steps toward the morning tasks. Debate continues among scholars over whether every Stone Age group truly woke with the sun. Some point to caves deep in the north, where darkness lingered even at noon. Others argue that in equatorial regions, early humans must have adapted to shorter, sharper bursts of daylight. But what most agree on is, this waking wasn't about preference. It was about timing. In this world, dawn decides everything. Food doesn't wait. Predators don't snooze. And the day ahead, whether filled with fire-tending tool sharpening or walking miles for berries, starts not with a to-do list, but with a communal exhale. You don't rush. You sit for a moment, watching the morning unfurl like smoke from a twig. Your limbs are stiff, but the earth is warm beneath you. A bird lands nearby, then flits away. Something about its path makes you wonder what it saw while you slept. Someone stirs the embers. Another shakes out a fur mat. Somewhere deeper in the woods, something large snaps a branch. You're awake now, not jolted, not yanked, just here, with the others. In a world lit by fire and sky, the sound of scraping stone carries before the sun fully rises. It's not harsh, more like a soft, grinding rhythm, like a lullaby with muscle. The kind of sound that reminds you breakfast isn't just eaten, it's earned. Your knees sink into packed earth as you crouch beside the others. There's a flat stone before you, and another smoother one in your hands. You start the movement without thinking, press, twist, lift, repeat. Grain spills between the stones like dry sand, stubborn and gritty. A few kernels bounce away, chased by a child who giggles every time one escapes. There's no scent of toast or brewed coffee. Instead, you smell crushed grass seeds. Root starch the slight metallic tang of the stone itself. It fills your nose the way flour used to fill your grandmother's kitchen, except this flour doesn't come from a sack. It comes from the wild, from what your hands can gather and tame. You glance around. Some grind roots, others crack nuts with smooth river rocks. The younger ones sort through yesterday's forage. Are these too bitter? Is that one too old? Even a toddler with sticky fingers pretends to help, proudly poking a wormy acorn and declaring it good. Quern stones, they'll later call these tools. Archaeologists will find them buried in sediment edges polished not by time, but by generations of use. They'll also find bones, wrists, elbows, hips worn in strange ways, curved by the quiet violence of repetition. And they'll puzzle over what these marks meant: status, survival, or simply habit. As you work, a woman hums. Her tune has no name, but you recognize the pattern: rise, fall, circle, back. It keeps the rhythm steady. Another woman joins in with a beat tapped on her grinding stone, and suddenly the morning feels less like a chore and more like something else. Maybe not joy, but connection. Some scholars debate whether grain was even common in all Stone Age diets. In wetter regions, roots and tubers dominated. In colder ones, dried meat and marrow. And then there's the question of cooking. Were these pounded ingredients baked on hot rocks or boiled in hide-lined pits? Clay pots come much later. The evidence is patchy, like smoke that disappears before you can follow it. A boy walks past carrying a basket of something that might be nuts or might be old dung. No one's sure. He drops it beside an elder who sniffs once and then chuckles. Fuel, she mutters and gets to sorting. Nothing goes to waste. Even mistakes have value. Grinding goes on. Backs bend. Chatter rises. Someone sneezes and sends a puff of powder into the air. It floats in a lazy spiral before settling on your skin like snow. You laugh softly and wipe your face, leaving a chalky streak. Your arms ache now, and your stomach growls. The sun's higher, no longer gold, but bright and blunt. Someone says the fire pit's nearly ready. Another suggests checking for berries. But for now, you keep grinding. It's not just about food. It's about doing what's always been done in the company of those who remember how. Even before you see it, you hear it, the low, satisfied crackle of embers refusing to die. It's not loud, but it's insistent, like a whisper from the bones of the earth. Keep me alive. The fire pit is the heart of the camp, blackened and sunken, like a memory you can't quite shake. Someone left a few coals stacked smartly under damp ash. Now you kneel and begin coaxing them back to life, not with lighters or matches, but with breath bark and a twist of dried moss. A child crouches beside you, holding a splinter of wood like it's a holy relic. They don't speak, but you can feel their gaze. Slowly, reverently, you fan the embers. Smoke coils upward, stinging your eyes and painting your lashes with soot. The coals respond with a soft red glow, like an animal finally opening its eyes. A tiny flame flutters to life. The child grins. In most camps, fire duty is serious business. Too young to hunt, too small to carry water, you can still feed the flame. It's a job that matters. Sometimes the youngest are entrusted with live embers wrapped in moss and tucked inside hollowed antlers or shells. When the group moves, these glowing bundles go, too passed from hand to careful hand, like secrets you don't dare forget. Some researchers suggest fire keepers held sacred status in certain early cultures, neither quite spiritual leaders nor simple laborers, but something in between. Others argue there's no concrete evidence of this, only hints of burial with charred tools, an unusual number of hearths near one set of bones. Speculation flickers like the flames themselves, bright, fascinating, and occasionally misleading. You blow again, and the flame answers with a crackle. Others join you now, bringing twigs fanning with mats or tossing in bark strips that release sweet smoke. Someone mutters about pine making the stew taste strange again. Another laughs. Someone else adds a pinch of something sharp, sage or something like it, and suddenly the air smells like memory. This isn't just cooking fire. It's warmth, protection, and community rolled into one. The pit marks time, marks place. You can measure the day by its size, its color, its scent. Over there, a girl holds 2 stones over the coals practicing striking sparks. Each failure is met with furrowed brows and grit. Eventually she'll get it. For now, her father watches silently, arms crossed but smiles soft. Learning fire is its own right. Beside the pit, someone sharpens a bone tool. The scraping sound mingles with the hiss of damp wood. A dog-like creature wolf, maybe, or something between circles sniffing for scraps. You toss it a burnt nut. It huffs, lies down, and stares into the fire like it remembers something. There's no ceremony, no grand moment. But when the flames finally catch properly dancing tall and sure you feel it, the camp has awakened. Breakfast is coming. The chores begin. The day officially starts, not with the sun, but with fire. And you were here when it opened its eyes. You're still chewing when the decision is made. Time to wander. Not far, just far enough to find something. Fresh berries, eggs, a plump lizard if you're lucky. Your feet know the way before your mind does. Soft earth patches of sun, the rustle of ferns brushing your calves. The group fans out slowly, unhurried but alert. Each person follows different signs, bent grass, insect trails, a certain kind of scat. The air is heavy with moisture and morning breath, but it's also full of promise. Breakfast might still be clinging to a branch or crouching under a rock. You hold a basket woven from reeds and hope. Someone else carries a digging stick. Another has a sling, though it's mostly for show. Small game is fast, and you're not. Foraging is half memory, half instinct. You remember your mother teaching you how to spot ripe berries. By the way the birds behave if they're feasting, you might be too late. But if the bees hover low, and lazy chances are, the fruit is fat and untouched. Buzz, buzz, jackpot. You crouch and pick slowly, fingers stain deep purple in moments. The fruit is warm from the sun and bursts easily, leaving sticky trails down your wrist. A child nearby eats more than they gather, grinning with a face like a painted mask. No one scolds them. Abundance is rare enough to savor, not scold. There's debate among scholars about just how much early humans ate raw. Some argue the discovery of fire quickly changed everything. More calories, fewer parasites, softer textures. Others insist the transition was gradual, driven by season and circumstance. In warmer regions, raw tubers and fruits might still have dominated. In colder ones, cooked meat meant survival. The evidence is chewed crushed and long since digested. You dig around the roots of a wild plant hoping for bulbs. The soil is dry but soft. No luck. A nearby forager whistles 3 sharp notes and you look up. They've found something. You head over curiosity winning over hunger. It's a cluster of eggs hidden in a hollow beneath thorny brush. Not chicken, obviously some wild fowl you can't name. There's a brief discussion about whether to take them. Some prefer leaving them to hatch. Others argue a meal today is worth more than a maybe tomorrow. In the end, a few are pocketed and a few are left. Balance, not greed, guides decisions here. You pass a patch of mushrooms, but walk on. They look familiar, but only just, and almost sure can get you almost dead. Someone else marks the spot with a broken twig, a note for later. Maybe the elder will know. By the time the sun climbs higher, your basket holds berries, 2 eggs a root you can't name, and a snail someone swears is edible. It's not much, but it's something. And something here is enough. You head back toward the camp dirt under your nails, juice on your chin, and a new appreciation for the phrase finding your breakfast. Choosing your tool for the day feels more like instinct than strategy. Today your hand reaches for a basket, but yesterday it was a stone blade, and the day before, a wooden digging stick polished from use. The choice isn't random, but it isn't rigid either. It's a quiet dance between what the day needs and what you feel like becoming. Baskets don't get enough credit. They're stitched from patience, long grasses, twisted, soaked, and braided, until strong enough to carry firewood or berries or baby squirrels, depending on what fate drops in. Yours has a frayed edge and smells faintly of smoke. It creaks when you swing it onto your back. Others opt for spears, long, simple shafts tipped with bone or obsidian. There's a sharp elegance to them. You watch a boy balance his across his shoulders, arms draped lazily, as if he's not holding a weapon, but a walking stick with ambition. Then there are the axes, heavy purposeful, with stone heads that fit perfectly into hand-carved sockets. You've used one before to split logs or muscle through thickets. They demand more strength, but they also speak louder. Carrying one says, "I expect trouble." Tool choice isn't just personal. It reflects the season, the task, even the mood of the group. During rainy months, digging sticks and fish traps take center stage. In leaner times, snares and blades are more common. Women, men, children all carry something. There's no formal rule, only patterns that form and dissolve like mist. Some archaeologists once argued tools followed strict gender lines. Women gathered men, hunted children, mimicked both. But more recent studies muddy the waters. Wear patterns on female skeletons suggest long-distance trekking and spear throwing. Burial goods blur lines further. A woman with blades, a man with weaving tools. The evidence refuses to fit neatly. And that's the point. It wasn't neat. You pause by the stream to adjust the strap on your basket. Nearby, a girl threads twine through a new fish trap. She's young, maybe 10, but her fingers move fast, practiced. She glances at your basket and nods in approval. Tools here are a kind of language. Hers says, "I'm building." Yours says, "I'm ready." A man passes with an obsidian blade tucked into his belt. It glints black-blue in the light, impossibly sharp, like it could slice the air itself. He doesn't speak, just lifts 2 fingers in a silent greeting. You return the gesture and move on. Tools are traded, borrowed, sometimes even named. One elder calls her walking stick, which sounds like a joke until you realize it might be the only name it's ever had. Another has a knife wrapped in dyed sinew. He claims it sings when it cuts fish. No one has heard it, but no one doubts him either. You run your hand along the curve of your basket's rim and feel the grooves from where the grass split in the heat. Nothing here is disposable. Nothing is just gear. Every tool tells a story of a season, a hand, a need. And today your story starts with a basket. The wind picks up just enough to rustle the canopy, and that's the signal, time to move. No announcement, no roll call, just a shared glance between 2 elders, a quiet shrug from the firekeeper, and the unspoken truth that staying means less while walking might mean more. You gather your things, though things is generous. A fur mat, a bundle of roots, your basket. Someone ties a cord around a pouch with eggs. Someone else folds a net into tight spirals. There's no panic, no rush. Migration is routine like breathing, just on a larger scale. The camp begins to dissolve with the efficiency of ants. Fire embers are scooped into mossy holders. Hides are rolled. Even the soot-blackened stones from the cooking pit are stacked carefully, perhaps to be used again. A child tries to carry a mat twice their size and ends up dragging it instead, puffing with theatrical effort. No one stops them. You begin walking. Paths aren't marked, but they're known. Remembered by toe scuffs in stone, the angle of the sun, or a gnarled tree that always seems to lean a little too far left. Children ride on hips slung in wraps or balanced with practiced arms. One rides in a bark sled dragged by a girl barely older, her bare feet kicking up little clouds of dust. The pace is steady, more song than march. Someone hums again. The melody has changed since morning, longer notes a wandering tune. Another voice joins, then another. Before long, the group is a drifting chorus with legs. Migrations happen for many reasons: food water season scent, or sometimes just because the ground feels finished. Some scholars theorize camps moved every few days, while others suggest longer stays near reliable rivers or caves. Archaeological traces are sparse. Ash piles vanish. Footprints wash away. Theories shift like the travelers they study. A soft anchor moment. Now earlier you warmed your hands at the fire. Now your hands swing freely, the air cooler in motion. Your body is already adjusting, remembering the long strides, the balance between watching the trail and watching each other. You pass a bush heavy with bright berries. Someone stops, quickly plucks a handful, then jogs to catch up. There's no rule against foraging mid-migration, just keep pace. Elders move slower, but with a stubborn grace. One walks with a stick that thuds rhythmically against the ground. Thud, step, thud, step. After a while, someone points out a bird's nest in a branch overhead. Another notices claw marks on a tree, old, maybe a lynx. Warnings and wonders mingle on the trail, quiet as footfalls. You stop to rest by a fallen log. Water skins are passed around. A child climbs the log, declares it a throne, then promptly falls off. Laughter blooms, then fades as quickly as it came. Not because it wasn't funny, but because the trail still calls. By mid-afternoon, you're close to the next stop, a hollowed patch near a stream. Smoke will rise again. Stories will circle the fire. Mats will unroll like tired petals. But for now, you walk, step breath, glance repeat, and the world moves with you. You don't notice the flint chips until you nearly sit on one. It's sharp, fresh, and still warm from a hand not yours, but someone nearby. You shift slightly, and that's when you realize this isn't just a rest break. It's flint hour. A small circle has formed beneath the shadow of a leaning tree. Knees tucked up, tools in hand, they work the stone with soft clicks and cracks. You settle in, pull a piece from your pouch, and begin tapping gently with a hammerstone. The rhythm is ancient: tap, twist, flick, test the edge. There's no formal instruction. Learning happens sideways here by watching, mimicking, adjusting. A boy too young to speak in full sentences chips away at a nodule tongue poking from the corner of his mouth. His flakes are uneven, but no one corrects him. Failure is just prehistory's version of feedback. Conversations meander like the breeze. Someone mentions a dream, they had something about a fire with blue smoke. Another chuckles and says they dreamt of a fish with hands. A third mutters about a goat walking backward, and nobody questions it. Tool making, it turns out, is the perfect excuse for storytelling. You chip. They gossip. It's not malicious. More the soft kind, the kind that links people together like knots in string. A recent forager's tumble becomes a running joke. Someone wonders if the new family at the edge of the group is cursed or just unlucky. Someone else retells a hunt gone sideways. Apparently the deer screamed. Historians still argue whether these moments were ritualistic or just relaxed. Was gossip a bonding ceremony, or simply the sound of bored hands? Some think flint circles were sacred, echoing spiritual preparation. Others point to the casualness of the finds, flakes scattered, half-finished tools, pieces reused for fire starting. Perhaps the truth is somewhere in between. A soft callback here. Remember the girl weaving the fish trap earlier? She's here now offering unsolicited opinions about everyone's tool technique. That edge is too thick, she tells you. You'll slice fish, not clean them. She grins. You feign offense and shave it thinner. She nods. Better? Someone carves a spiral into the handle of a blade decoration or identification. No one's sure. It's not functional, but it feels important. You trace it with your finger and feel a pulse of pride. Art has no rule book here. It just appears. Flakes pile up like dry leaves. The air smells faintly of dust and stone. A nearby girl sneezes, then curses the powder. Someone offers a scrap of hide to blow her nose. It's absurd and sweet at once. A sharp flake nicks your thumb, and a dot of blood appears. Nothing serious. You wipe it on your knee and keep working. Pain is just another teacher. Eventually, someone cracks their neck, and murmurs, "Fire's almost ready." The circle breaks slowly like molasses pouring. Flakes are brushed aside, tools tucked into belts or pouches. The stories end mid-sentence. Maybe they'll be picked up later, or maybe they'll drift away like sparks. For now, it's time to rise. You don't need a mirror to know you smell like smoke moss and slightly overripe berries. Luckily, no one expects perfume in this world. But that doesn't mean hygiene is ignored, far from it. River time is here. You strip off layers of fur and hide, folding them neatly beside a sun-warmed rock. The river isn't wide, but it's fast in places, curling over stones, smoothed by generations of feet and paws. The water is cold enough to make you hiss through your teeth, but refreshing all the same. You wade in slowly, shins first, then thighs, then the sudden shock at your belly. A full-body gasp, then peace. Others are already in some scrubbing, some swimming, some just floating like driftwood with opinions. A young girl stands on a rock combing her hair with a shell-toothed tool. Each stroke pulls through tangles, and she hums quietly, the sound barely louder than the current. You reach for your toothstick, a birch twig chewed at one end, until it's soft like a paintbrush. It tastes faintly minty bitter, and a little sweet like memory mixed with bark. You rub it across your teeth and gums, thinking of the others doing the same nearby. Someone makes a face like they've bitten into something terrible. Someone else burps dramatically and claims it's the herbs working. Hygiene here always comes with a side of humor. Scholars still debate how early humans balanced cleanliness and ritual. Was bathing purely practical, or did it carry spiritual weight? Cleansing not just dirt, but dreams, curses, or grief. Burial sites suggest care for the body after death. So, why not care while alive? You rub smooth stones against your arms and legs, lifting layers of dust and effort. Someone passes by, dribbling a handful of crushed leaves into the water. A floral scent rises oddly sharp, like something between lavender and vinegar. An elder nearby raises an eyebrow and mutters, trying to catch a mate. Laughter ripples through the reeds. Your soft anchor earlier, you walked for miles. Now you float limbs, light thought lighter still. You watch as a child fills a gourd with water, then spills it just for fun. Their parent sighs, but smiles. Further downstream, two teenagers argue over whose feet smell worse, a debate resolved with a dunking match. Their shrieks echo, then fade into giggles. You find a patch of riverbank, shaded by ferns, and settle there to dry. Sun filters through in patches warm against the cool droplets on your skin. A comb, wooden carved with fish shapes, appears in your hand, passed silently by a cousin or a stranger or someone in between. You nod and begin to work through your damp hair. Somewhere nearby, someone sings a lullaby that doesn't care what time of day it is. It's soft in a language you understand only in your chest. Clean now, or close enough you gather your layers. The smoke scent is still there, woven into the fur clinging to the seams, but it feels like part of you, not something to wash away. The fire waits. So do the others. And you return to them, not fresh exactly, but renewed. You don't realize you've been staring at the sky until someone throws a twig at you. Dreaming again, they tease settling beside you in the shade of a tilted tree. You grin, but say nothing. What's there to explain? The clouds look like mammoths fighting over a berry bush. Or maybe just clouds. Hard to say. Afternoons in camp stretch like animal skins, tanned, pulled tight, then softened by time. No urgent tasks press in. The fires tended the foods foraged, and the river has rinsed the worst of the day's dust. Now it's the hour of quiet. You lie back on the mossy ground and let your thoughts melt into the sky. The blue above seems too wide to hold still. Birds trace invisible paths. Insects drone like sleepy flutes. Your hand rests on your stomach, rising and falling, with each breath like a slow wave on a lake. Someone nearby is carving a piece of bone. Not for a tool, but for fun. They scratch spirals into it, pointless, beautiful spirals. You watch them for a while, then close your eyes and picture the shape again, behind your eyelids. Rest here isn't laziness. It's a cycle. Action needs its opposite. And sometimes nothing is the most productive thing you can do, especially when that nothing leads to ideas. Some scholars believe these idle stretches were the breeding grounds of early imagination, symbolic thought. They argue didn't come from crisis, but from calm. Cave paintings, body decorations, little figurines. What need do they serve, if not to express, and what better time to create them than after lunch when the sun is high and the body says pause? Others disagree, insisting these moments were rare luxuries of unusually abundant days. But then, they weren't here. They didn't see the way you and your people dream while awake. You roll onto your side and trace patterns in the dirt. A spiral. A fish. Something that might be a sun. Someone adds to it a pair of antlers maybe, or wings. No words pass, but the story grows between your fingers. A soft callback. Remember that carved fish comb from the river. Someone's using it now to scratch their back, completely ignoring its original purpose. They sigh contentedly. You all laugh, but gently. In a distant corner of camp, a child sings nonsense while balancing a stick on their nose. An elder watches from under a fur shawl, chuckling softly. Someone else naps, sitting up their chin dipping with each breath. No one disturbs them. The wind rustles a branch overhead. A leaf falls landing perfectly in your open palm. It's yellowed small, a little torn at the edge. You stare at it like it's a sign from the sky. Maybe it is. Maybe not. You twirl it once between your fingers, then let it drift back to earth. There's time yet before chores return, before the fire needs more wood, before the stew begins to bubble. For now, you lie back and let your mind wander. Sometimes the best discoveries come from simply not moving. A high-pitched giggle breaks the hush, a strange sound halfway between joy and battle cry. You sit up just in time to see two toddlers charging at each other with spears the length of their arms. They're blunt, of course, made from willow twigs and wishful thinking. But in their eyes, this is war. You watch as they collide, tumble, and then immediately forget what they were fighting about. One sits on the other's belly and starts making ant sounds. The other begins chewing a leaf in retaliation. Adults glance over and smile, but don't intervene. Play is sacred here, even if it's ridiculous. Childhood in this camp isn't a waiting room. It's a dress rehearsal. Little ones shadow adults all day, mimicking their movements with hilarious precision. A toddler stirs a pot of mud, while nearby their mother stirs the real stew. A boy sharpens a stick on stone, just like his uncle sharpening an actual blade. They work side by side, one real, one pretend, and often it's hard to tell which is which. Tiny spears, tiny baskets, tiny fires. Nothing's too small to copy. A girl no older than 4 wears a woven pouch filled with absolutely nothing and guards it like treasure. Another carries a pebble as if it's a sacred ember tucked into moss. These aren't toys, they're symbols. Training in disguise. Archaeologists have found baby footprints near hearths. fire rings, and even animal butchering sites. Some of those prints are barely the length of a thumb. What were they doing there, helping, watching, pretending to help, while eating the good bits? There's no scholarly consensus, only impressions literal and metaphorical. A soft anchor moment earlier, you carved spirals in the dirt beside the dreamers. Now those same dreamers have grown legs and are chasing each other with sticks shaped like spears. You squint as a group of older children hauls a log toward the fire pit. It's clearly too heavy. They huff. They puff, one fakes a muscle cramp, another tries pushing with their forehead. Eventually they succeed with style. The log thuds down, and they collapse on top of it like conquering heroes. An elder nods solemnly and says, "This is how giants are made." The children beam. Play blurs with responsibility. A child tasked with gathering herbs may turn it into a treasure hunt. Another told to watch the fire spends most of their time creating elaborate ash castles. Still, the job gets done, mostly. You spot a girl lining up pebbles in order of shininess. Beside her, a boy uses 2 sticks to pretend cook a beetle. Neither has been told what to do. They've simply absorbed the rhythm around them. This isn't school. There are no tests. But somehow, they learn, faster than you'd think, smarter than they seem. Someone cries, a scrape, a tumble, a brief pause, then a hug, a dried leaf pressed to the wound and back to the game. Life goes on. Small hands reach for big tools, little legs chase after big stories, and the fire crackles in the background, waiting for the next generation to keep it alive. You hear it before you see it. A bone flute whistling softly, strangely sweet. The notes aren't polished more wind than melody, but they wrap around your ears like warm breath on a cold morning. Someone's playing near the fire, perched on a rock like a bird testing its voice. You follow the sound and find them there, legs crossed, cheeks puffed as they blow into a hollowed femur. From what no one's sure, maybe a deer, maybe something stranger. The holes are uneven. The music is imperfect. And yet, it feels right. Nearby, 2 others tap rhythmically on a stretched high drum, more thump than tone. Their hands move in sync without looking as if guided by some rhythm buried deep in the ribs. Another person claps, sticks together, wood on wood, dry and sharp, echoing like footsteps in a dream. Music in the camp isn't background noise, it's structure. It rises during work, floats through meal times, and anchors rituals. Some days it calms children, other days it stirs warriors. Sometimes it just fills the silence like smoke fills a hut, soft curling, strangely necessary. You join the gathering sitting near the edge. Someone hands you a gourd rattle seeds inside dry and ancient. You shake it gently. It doesn't make much sound, but the rhythm travels up your arm like memory. You close your eyes. For a moment, the world becomes vibration. Scholars continue to debate whether music or language came first. Some point to rhythm as primal a heartbeat, a footstep a drum. Others argue for words, for symbols, for meaning. But here in this twilight drum circle of dust and smoke, the question feels irrelevant. Whatever came first, both are here now. A soft callback. Remember that child from earlier who balanced a stick on their nose? They're here now too, trying to blow across a carved reed and accidentally spitting. No one mocks them. Instead, someone else demonstrates slowly, patiently, until a faint note squeaks out. Cheers erupt, quiet ones, but still. Not all instruments are tools. Some are toys turned sacred. Someone shakes a pouch filled with pebbles. It sounds like a stream. Another hums into a hollow log. It doesn't carry far, but the sound makes your chest buzz. Music here isn't taught. It's absorbed. Learned the same way as flint chipping or fire feeding, by watching, trying, failing, and laughing. An elder begins a chant, low, droning, steady as breath. No words, just tone. Others join in layering hums and pulses like sediment. Together, it builds not a song, but a storm, not performance, but presence. Your skin tingles, your thoughts slow, and then, like a fire being starved of air, it fades. The notes trail off, one last rattle, one final breath through bone. Someone chuckles and says, "That was for the moon." Someone else nods solemnly. No one asks what it means. The group disbands without cue. Instruments are tucked away into bags, into hair, into memory. The fire crackles again this time as the dominant sound. You walk away lighter, not changed exactly, just attuned. Chores arrive quietly like dusk unannounced, but suddenly everywhere. No one gives orders. Instead, people rise, stretch glance around, and simply begin. Someone starts weaving cord. Another piles stones for a cooking ring. A third disappears to check snares. You find yourself scooping ash from the fire pit without quite knowing why. The beauty of this place isn't just in its rhythm, it's in its flexibility. Yesterday you sharpened fish hooks. Today you gather kindling. Tomorrow could be anything. Tasks shift not with hierarchy, but with mood, skill, or availability. Roles here are worn like cloaks, easy to trade, quick to mend. You notice an older woman tying a net with deft fingers. A boy watches her silent, absorbing. Earlier he was cracking jokes and playing drum beats on a log. Now he's watching her knots like they hold the secrets of the stars. Maybe they do. Some anthropologists once insisted prehistoric life was dominated by rigid gender roles. The classic man, the hunter woman, the gatherer model. But new findings complicate the picture. Burial sites show women buried with weapons. Wear patterns suggest men did domestic tasks. Children. They did everything and nothing. Helpers, imitators, and inventors rolled into one. Scholars still debate whether roles were assigned by age strength or simple preference. One theory suggests older women often held quiet power managing food supplies and rituals alike. Another posits that mobility meant adaptability. If someone got injured, someone else stepped in. Survival didn't leave room for stubbornness. You look around and spot a trio sorting roots by size. They argue lightheartedly about whether one counts as medium or large. Nearby, two people swap baskets, each clearly better suited to the other's task. The trade is wordless, mutual, and instantly more efficient. A soft anchor here earlier. You watched children mimic adults. Now those same adults mimic each other, sharing tasks like language fluid and ever-changing. You join a small group scraping hides. It's tedious work, pulling sinew, softening edges, but oddly satisfying. One person sings a slow tune as they work, and the rest fall into rhythm. Scrape, pull, hum. Scrape, pull, hum. A dog, possibly the same one that begged near the fire, plops down beside the hides. It rolls onto its back, begging for attention. Someone obliges with a foot rub. It groans in pleasure and closes its eyes. The work continues around it undisturbed. Another group returns with firewood and news. A tree fell near the river bend. Nothing urgent, but someone suggests checking it tomorrow. Fallen trees mean mushrooms, maybe even burrowing animals. Plans are penciled not in ink, but in glances and nods. As the sun begins to slope toward the horizon, tasks wind down. Baskets fill. Fingers ache. A woman rubs her wrist and mutters that her bones are older than the camp itself. Someone offers a massage. She declines, then changes her mind. The air smells like bark sweat and quiet satisfaction. No fanfare, no announcements, just work shared and finished until it begins again tomorrow. The fire flares again, a signal not of danger, but of dinner. Smoke drifts upward, tangled with the sense of bark root and something vaguely meat-like, or maybe not. You lower yourself onto a fur mat and breathe in deeply. Whatever's cooking, it's going to taste like history. Stone soup, some call it. Not because it's made of stones, though occasionally hot, rocks are dropped in to speed the boil, but because it starts with almost nothing and becomes something. A pot of water, a pinch of herbs, a slice of tuber, maybe a strip of dried meat if the hunt was good. Then, like magic or memory, it turns into a meal. You watch as a woman adds bark strips softened by soaking and seasoned with what she insists is wild garlic. Someone else sprinkles in dried mushrooms. A child tosses in a suspicious lump that turns out to be tuber, not dung relief all around. The smell is smoky, earthy layered. Nothing refined, everything familiar. There's still debate about how often meat was actually eaten in the Stone Age. Some theories paint early humans as relentless hunters always chasing mammoths and roasting feasts. Others argue that meat was rare, a prize rather than a staple, while plants' roots and insects did most of the daily work. Surviving bones tell conflicting stories. The truth likely shifts by season, region, and luck. A man stirs the pot with a stick so scorched it might have once been a torch. Steam rises in delicate swirls. He takes a taste, winces dramatically, and calls it surprisingly edible. Laughter follows as expected. Every camp has at least one cook and at least 3 critics. Soft callback. Remember the snail you collected during morning forage? Someone actually brought theirs. It's in the stew now. Someone else adds pine needles for flavor. Another drops in a small fish head, and all with a solemn whisper of thanks. The fish looks unimpressed. You sip from a carved wooden bowl, rough around the rim, but still warm in your hands. The broth is thin but rich. The flavor's indistinct but satisfying. You taste smoke bark, maybe root, maybe rabbit, or is that beetle no one knows, and no one really cares? A dog circles the group tail, low eyes hopeful. It gets the fish head, of course, and runs off victorious. Children slurp loudly. Elders chew slowly with the focus of poets reviewing a final draft. Communal meals like this aren't just about food. They're social glue. Every sip shared, every joke, told every burnt root. Examined as a stitch in the fabric of group life. You're not just filling your belly. You're weaving yourself deeper into the day. As the bowl empties, conversation softens. Bellies warm, heads nod, shoulders relax. One woman wipes her bowl with a leaf and licks it clean. Another stares into the pot as if divining tomorrow's weather from steam patterns. The fire pops. A child sneezes. A wolf howls in the far distance, but no one moves. Tonight you eat what the earth gave, and somehow it's enough. The fire dims, but no one moves to leave. Instead, they lean in. Elbows brush, heads rest on shoulders. Eyes lift toward a sky that's no longer blue but ink-stained, the stars just beginning to puncture the dark. This is the hour of stories. Someone pokes the embers, sending up a small burst of sparks. In their glow, shadows dance along the cave wall, twisting into beasts, spirits, and ancestors that no one has ever seen and everyone somehow remembers. An elder begins. Their voice is low, scratchy, comforting. Not commanding, but magnetic. The story doesn't start with "once upon a time." It starts with a question: what do you do when the bear speaks your name? Everyone leans closer. The tale winds through darkness and firelight. It's about a hunter who marries a wind, a child born with eagle eyes, a cave that laughs when entered alone. Details shift each telling. Some nights the wind is a woman, others a man. The bear changes size, but the rhythm stays. You watch a child mouth along with the story lips moving silently. They know this version. Or maybe they just know how it ends. Scholars still argue how literal these stories were. Were they history disguised as myth, or dreams shaped into memory? Were the beasts real once, or metaphors for hunger, love, fear? Some say the stories were maps, guides to survival wrapped in metaphor. Others say they were simply entertainment for long, cold nights. Either way, they've lasted. A soft anchor. Now earlier you work beside gossip and flint. Now the same lips tell stories older than stone. A figure leans forward, their face lit only by fire. They add a twist to the tale, a path not taken, a mistake unmade. The elder doesn't protest. The story absorbs. It grows stronger. Everyone nods. Nothing is fixed. Even myths breathe here. A girl clutches a fur wrap tighter. A boy pretends not to be scared. Someone mimics the bear's growl, and laughter breaks the tension. The shadows flicker, fade, reform. Then a new voice speaks. Not loud, not bold, but sure. It's the child from before, adding a tale of their own. A dream they had where stars fell into the river and turned into fish. No one mocks. One person nods and murmurs, "Yes, that happened once." There's no stage, no script. Just fire, sky, and memory. Stories don't belong to tellers, they belong to listeners. Each one heard becomes a seed carried forward, changed only by the winds of time and imagination. You lean back now, the story still swirling in your ears. The stars are clearer, brighter, almost sharp. Someone mutters that they see a wolf in the sky. Another says it's a spoon. The argument is quiet, but passionate. Above you, constellations ignore both opinions. The fire shrinks. The storyteller's voice fades. Silence thickens, not heavy, but full. The bear is gone. The child sleeps. The wind watches from the cave mouth, and the stars listen, waiting for the next tale. Sleep doesn't arrive all at once. It tiptoes and soft as ash. The fires no longer flame, but glow a breathing red beneath collapsing logs. The camp has folded into itself. Bodies curl like commas side by side under furs that still smell faintly of river water and bark. You find your spot without thinking. The same patch of moss, the same bundle of woven reeds beneath your head. Someone's shoulder brushes yours. You don't look. You don't need to. They're breathing slow like you. Above the sky has settled. Stars blink like distant campfires. No one speaks now except in sleep. A baby snuffles. Someone mutters in their dream. A dog sighs heavily and shifts, pressing its warm side into yours. Comfort doesn't need language here. This is not the lonely kind of silence. It's the woven kind pulled tight around you like a cloak. You feel the group's warmth in every breath of air, in the faint scent of smoke, in the shared exhale of bodies that have done for today enough. There's no bedtime story now. The last one was told hours ago. But memory replays its own version. You find yourself drifting back to the tale of the bear that speaks names. Or was it the fish who swallowed the moon? The stories don't end. They just soften. Some scholars wonder whether dreams guided decisions among early humans. Were visions taken as signs? Did a strange image in sleep lead to the next day's hunt, or convince someone to change paths? Some say yes, pointing to shamanic practices and symbolic art. Others argue dreams were just dreams, nothing more. But here, wrapped in firelight and silence, you start to understand why someone might believe otherwise. A dream here is not just private. It becomes communal, shared over breakfast, interpreted, reinterpreted, folded into myth. No alarm clocks, no separation. Waking and dreaming blur like smoke and mist. Soft callback. Remember that leaf you caught earlier, drifting from a tree? Someone else has one now tucked behind their ear as they sleep. It flutters slightly with each breath. Maybe coincidence. Maybe not. Someone snores. Someone else groans. A baby lets out a single perfectly confused squeak before settling again. You shift slightly, fur brushing your cheek. Your hand rests near the ashes of the fire. They're still warm. The night is not quiet. Wolves howl in the distance, an owl hoots. Once something scurries nearby, but the noise is old familiar part of the lullaby. This is not danger. This is background. You close your eyes. In your last waking thought, you remember something the elder said. Once the stars are just holes in the sky where our ancestors peek through. You smile barely. By morning, the stars have faded, but the memory of warmth lingers, carried not in dreams, but in hands that know. A new day begins, not with chatter, but with the quiet, deliberate clink of stone on stone. You stand before a stone slab, the size of a curled-up bear. It's been dragged here, chipped, examined, and tapped with the bone-white edge of an antler. All around you, other materials lie in neat, thoughtful piles, smooth river rocks, slivers of red deer, femur-dry chunks of pitch as sticky as tree tears. The air smells of damp hide and ash. You reach down and pick up a flint core, dull gray, yet somehow promising. One sharp tap, and a flake falls cleanly away, slicing your thumb just enough to sting. That's flint for you, deceptively smooth, deadly sharp. And the favorite child of Stone Age nappers across continents. But not all tools were stone. Some were antler, which had the slight bounce and toughness needed for tasks where flint would snap. Others used long bones or tusks, especially when delicacy was required, like threading beads or sewing fur. Each material came with quirks. Obsidian blades sharper than modern surgical scalpels could break if dropped. Bone tools were light but brittle. And antler, while resilient, required months of curing to avoid rot. Which one to choose? That depended not just on task, but on region, season, and social connections. If you lived near volcanoes, obsidian was your birthright. If herds passed through your valley, you'd know the sound of antlers snapping underfoot. In icy zones, fishers favored bone needles and hooks carved from seal ivory. The local landscape shaped the local toolkit. Yet there's another more curious layer. Some scholars argue that the materials people used weren't always about function. A bright white blade made from mammoth tusk might signal status just as a glossy flint dagger with decorative notches could be more of a showpiece than a workhorse. Others disagree, pointing out wear patterns and repairs that suggest even the fanciest tools were well used. And so the debate continues: were these materials selected solely for their utility, or did they carry meaning, status, and identity as well? Were you what you carved with? Either way, in this quiet circle of nappers and flake makers, one truth is clear: you'd better know your materials, because every chip carries memory, and every mistake could cost more than a blade. There is something oddly musical about the soundstone tapping stone than the sudden crack of a flake popping loose. You lean closer. Each strike feels deliberate, measured, rhythmic, like percussion composed by patience. This is napping, and it's not just rock breaking. It's the slow, careful art of turning a lump of flint into something deadly or delicate or both. You hold a core in one hand, an antler billet in the other. The first blow misses, the second glances, the third finally sings. From the outside, it might look like trial and error, but your hands begin to learn angles and pressure, the way the core curves the direction it must be struck. Successful flakes come away with a satisfying snap, leaving behind a series of scalloped scars, ripples that mark each choice you made, each error you corrected. The result is never perfect, but it's yours. Flint napping wasn't just practical, it was deeply skilled. Even a basic scraper took understanding. A well-made spearhead that took finesse. The right platform angle, the exact force, and a sort of instinct, one that's hard to teach, but easy to lose a fingertip over. And yet, was it taught at all? Some researchers argue that napping was passed down formally, mentors showing students how to strike, how to hold, where to cut. They imagine lineages of craftsmen, knowledge handed like fire from elder to youth. Others suggest it was mimetic, learned by watching, imitating, failing, until success eventually stuck. Like watching your older sibling balance a stone knife and thinking, I can do that, before promptly slicing your palm open. The tools themselves don't tell us. There are no guidebooks from the Pleistocene, But the presence of consistent techniques across regions suggests more than just random flailing. Techniques like pressure flaking using bone or wood to shave a blade's edge appear widely, as do the careful preparations of striking platforms. These weren't accidents. In fact, archaeologists can sometimes identify the same artisan across multiple tools by analyzing flake patterns. Think of it like a fingerprint etched in stone. One maker always flakes right to left. Another favors deeper bulbs of percussion. It's humble evidence, but oddly intimate. You begin to recognize the human behind the blade. Then again, others believe it was a communal skill, not a specialized craft. Something everyone dabbled in, like cooking or storytelling. After all, even children's play areas show signs of basic napping debris. Perhaps mastery wasn't as rare as we think. One overlooked detail, left-handed tools. Some rare finds show angles better suited for southpaws, suggesting that even in early napping circles, lefties got their due, which is more than we can say for most modern desks. As your flint takes shape, you see not just a tool, but a memory forming. Each flake is a choice, each scar a story. You'll sharpen it again, perhaps reshape it. But for now, it's a small triumph in chipped stone, a whisper from your hands to the ages. A few flakes fall into your lap, and someone chuckles from across the circle. You look up to see others like you, hands dusty eyes squinting at stone, offering commentary that's part encouragement, part mockery. Welcome to the chipping circle. This wasn't always a solitary craft. In many sites, archaeologists have uncovered evidence of group napping circles of flint debris arranged in shared spaces, with worn seats around communal fire pits. You can almost hear the rhythm: tap, snap, laugh, repeat. These were social workshops, as much as they were tool factories. Imagine sitting cross-legged beside someone you've known your whole life, watching their hands shape a blade you'd be too nervous to try. One child tosses a failed flake into the fire. Another asks why their scraper keeps snapping. Someone older replies with a joke too crude for modern subtitles. It's learning by doing, with a side of gossip and smoke. Some of the flakes here are still warm. That means the group is active napping in real time, debating pressure points, praising a clean break. Others bring food. Someone carves a songbird into the side of a blade, half as decoration, half as distraction. These aren't factory workers, they're artists, teachers, improvisers. Of course, there's debate over who got to join these circles. Some scholars argue they were gendered, reserved for men in hunter-gatherer bands, especially those who made the weapons. Others push back, pointing to burial finds where women were interred with high-quality blades, suggesting they too were skilled makers. A child's grave in particular, containing a mini toolkit, suggests that age or gender wasn't always a barrier. It's also unclear whether there was any hierarchy. Was there a master napper, a sort of Stone Age professor with the best seat near the fire? Or did everyone contribute equally, offering tips and playful critique like colleagues in a prehistoric art class? The record is silent, but the circle shapes hint at something cooperative. One quirky find: a chipping station with a tall, oddly smooth stone in the center, possibly used not for flint, but as a shared anvil or a drum. A rhythm stone. Some speculate it was used to keep pace or signal when it was time to swap tools. Whether that's true or just a romantic guess, the image lingers. So you sit among them. Your hands ache from gripping stone. Your back tenses, but the shared silence, broken by the crack of a perfect flake, feels oddly comforting. You are part of a lineage that shaped blades before written words. Here mistakes are forgiven, jokes are shared, and each flake that lands just right earns a quiet nod from across the fire. The blade in your hand looks sharp, but it's useless until it can be held. Without a handle, even the most perfect edge becomes a finger hazard. So, Now you turn to the ancient craft of hafting, part engineering, part alchemy, part guesswork. You study the materials around you, sinew harvested from tendons and soaked until flexible, sticky pitch made from tree resin and charcoal dark and fragrant like scorched honey, slender wood shafts with grooves carefully shaved into them. Each item serves a purpose, and when combined just right, they transform your brittle flint into a functional, portable, and oddly elegant tool. It begins with the grip. The wood must be softened by heat or steam to bend slightly without cracking. You press the flint blade into a carved groove, adjusting it until it fits like a missing tooth. Then comes the pitch warmed over fire until it bubbles and sizzles. With a steady hand, you smear it like thick glue between stone and wood. Next, sinew. It wraps around the join like a protective bandage, tightening as it dries. You wind it slowly, evenly, pulling just enough to hold, not enough to snap. As it sets, you blow gently to cool the pitch and harden the bond. The scent of pine and burnt hide clings to your fingertips. Hafting wasn't just a mechanical necessity, it was a moment of transformation. A knapped stone became a tool only when it could be used safely and effectively. The haft turned a sharp object into a partner in survival for hunting, cutting, scraping, and defense. But how did early humans learn this method? Some believe they stumbled upon it by accident, perhaps pressing a hot flake into a piece of tarred wood and noticing it held. Others argue that the technique was passed down like a family recipe refined over generations until it became second nature. Evidence of early hafted tools dates back at least 200,000 years, found preserved in peat bogs and caves. But whether those creators understood the chemistry or just trusted tradition is still unclear. One peculiar find involved a blade hafted with birch bark resin, naturally antiseptic and waterproof. It suggests not just functionality, but innovation. Whoever made it knew their landscape and chose the perfect ingredients for durability. Was that knowledge shared widely or jealously guarded? Even today, experimental archaeologists attempt to recreate these methods. Some succeed. Others end up with gooey fingers and stone shards in their socks. There's no universal method, only local variations and educated guesses. Some regions favored hide wraps, others used plant fibers or beeswax. The materials told the story of the land. Your blade is now ready. Its flint edge glints faintly in the firelight, snug in its wooden cradle, bound like a promise. It feels different in your hand, less like a rock, more like a limb. The connection between you and the past quite literally becomes something you can hold. Your newly hafted blade looks proud of itself, sharp, balanced, and ready to work. But something about the edge catches your eye, a line of tiny dots almost decorative. They weren't there by accident. Someone added them. But why welcome to the strange and slightly mysterious world of tool decoration? Not content with function alone, early humans sometimes took the time to etch lines, symbols or dots onto their tools, especially blades. These weren't just random doodles. Many appear intentional, repeated, or placed in meaningful locations. But the meaning itself, that part's still a puzzle. You rotate the blade under firelight. The carvings shimmer faintly. Some resemble tally marks. Others spiral in a way that feels almost hypnotic. One flake bears a small ochre dot right near the hilt. Whether that was a signature, a mark of ownership, or just someone testing out pigment remains unknown. Decorated blades have been found in burials, caches, and abandoned campsites. Some are ceremonial-looking, never used. Others show heavy wear, suggesting they were still practical tools. There's debate over their purpose. Were these blades art objects, spiritual tokens, or just a moment of idle scratching while sitting around the fire? One theory suggests that marks helped identify ownership, especially in groups where tool sharing was common, like etching your initials into your lunchbox, but with a bit more flair. Another argues they were used in rituals or storytelling, visual cues tied to oral traditions. Imagine a hunter saying, "This notch, that was the boar that almost got me. This scratch, that's where I fell into a ravine." There's also a chance they were completely non-functional, just expressions of creativity. Because even in the harshest environments, humans doodle on cave walls, on bone, on stone blades. Some scholars believe these carvings represent one of the earliest intersections of utility and identity tools that were both practical and personal. An unusual example comes from a blade found in northern Europe. Its edge was carved not with dots, but tiny repeating fish symbols. The blade was found near a coastal site, suggesting its owner might have been a fisherman, or perhaps just someone who really liked fish. Interpretations vary. What's more, pigments like ochre appear alongside these carvings. Ochre was used for everything from tanning hides to painting bodies. Why dot it on a blade? Some say it marked completion, like stamping a tool with approval. Others believe it was a spiritual ward protecting the user from injury. Still others argue that the red color resembled blood and might have been applied after the first successful hunt, like a trophy or charm. As you examine the blade, your fingers trace the shallow lines. The grooves are faint, worn by time, but still distinct. Whoever made them had a reason. Even if we'll never know it, the marks remain a kind of silent conversation between maker and holder. So, you set the blade beside you, decorated, sharp, yours. A piece of art hidden in plain sight, ready to work and whispering a story no one can quite decode. You reach into the pile beside you and pull out a second blade, older, duller, with edges worn smooth from use. Someone's favorite, perhaps. But tonight, it's being sharpened. Again. Even the best tools lose their bite. And in the Stone Age, keeping a blade sharp was just as important as making it. So, you turn to the unassuming heroes of tool life, the sharpening stones. Simple, flat, carried in pouches or stashed by fire pits. But essential, especially when a dull edge could mean a failed hunt or a ruined hide. The sharpening process isn't loud. It's slow and steady, more like humming than hammering. You wet the stone with spit or water, then draw the blade across it in small, precise strokes. A gentle rasp fills the air. Over time, you develop a rhythm, sharpen, check, adjust, repeat. The edge returns cleaner, keener, as if waking up. But not every tool was sharpened forever. Some were retired, buried near campsites, broken intentionally, or placed in fire pits. Why? That's where the story turns strange. Some archaeologists believe this was ritual, that certain blades, especially those used in hunts or sacred tasks, were killed when their job was done. Broken flint, charred, antler-cracked bone tools have all been found in carefully arranged patterns too deliberate to be garbage. It's possible these tools held symbolic weight, and that breaking them was a kind of offering or closure. Others argue it was respect, not religion, a way of acknowledging the tool's service, like folding a worn flag or retiring a beloved pair of boots. In this view, tools weren't just objects, they were companions. A blade that saved your life or helped feed your child might deserve a proper send-off. Still, not all blades went gently. Some were resharpened until they were nothing but slivers. Others were reworked into smaller tools. A broken spearhead became a scraper, then maybe an awl. The life of a tool didn't end, it just evolved. Utility was extended until the very last chip. One peculiar find involved a set of flint blades buried in a circle, each pointing outward. In the center, a red ochre stain and a fragment of hide. Was it a ritual? A farewell? A very old inside joke no one knows. But the intention lingers even if the meaning has faded. There's also evidence that sharpening itself became a group task, especially before major hunts. sitting together, checking edges, swapping stones. Some sharpening tools show signs of decorative etching themselves, as if the stones were just as worthy of attention. A blade was only as good as the edge it kept. So tonight, as you draw the stone down your blade once more, you feel its old sharpness returning. It hums softly. It remembers. This tool has been shaped, used, dulled, and reborn. And perhaps someday it too will be placed in a circle, its final edge still whispering stories under the soil. A breeze lifts the flap of a nearby leather pouch, revealing something small and bone-white nestled inside. Not a blade this time, but a delicate hook curved like a question mark. You pick it up carefully. It's a fish hook carved from bone and polished by use. Beside it, a sliver-thin needle, its eye no wider than a hair. These aren't weapons. They're lifelines of a different kind. Not all tools were made for slicing or stabbing. Some were designed for precision, not power. Bone needles stitched together cloaks, and moccasins from fur and hide turning warmth into survival. Fish hooks fed entire camps, their fragile forms shaped from bird bones, antler tips, or even teeth. These were the quiet tools, the ones that mended, gathered, and sustained. You examine the needle more closely. It's astonishingly smooth, the result of hours of sanding and careful work. Its surface reflects a dull glow in the firelight. To make something this delicate without snapping it, that required skill, patience, and probably more than a few broken prototypes. And yet, such fragile objects had to travel. Camps moved with the seasons. Hunters ranged far. The question is, how did they protect such tiny essential tools? Some bone hooks were stored in tiny carved boxes, others tucked into soft leather rolls or pouches. One discovery included a bundle of needles wrapped in rabbit fur and tied with sinew, portable, warm, and oddly beautiful. Still, survival of these tools in the archaeological record is rare. Bone doesn't last like stone. Moisture, pressure, and time break it down. So every needle or hook we find is a small miracle. Some believe there were far more than we'll ever uncover, an entire invisible industry of craft, comfort, and care. There's also ongoing debate about who made these tools. Were they the domain of women, of elders, of skilled craftspeople who passed down quiet knowledge away from the drama of the hunt? Burial sites sometimes include these items alongside women and children, but not always. The pattern remains unclear. One curious find, a bone hook so fine it could have snagged a minnow, and yet it was discovered in a mountainous region with no river in sight. Was it traded or symbolic? Researchers can't agree. Maybe it was a lucky charm. Maybe someone carried it from their childhood camp, long abandoned. And then there's decoration. Even these tiny tools weren't exempt. Some feature carved spirals, painted tips, or notches along the shaft. As with the blades, their meaning is elusive. Ornament ownership, a way to make the ordinary beautiful. As you tuck the hook back into its pouch, you feel a strange tenderness. It isn't grand, but it mattered. Tools like these kept children warm, bellies full, and wounds stitched. They were born of necessity, shaped by hands that understood both survival and care. And though they rarely get the spotlight, their presence speaks volumes. In every cloak worn, in every fish eaten, their invisible work endures small artifacts of enormous impact. The pouch itself is no afterthought. Soft, worn leather stitched neatly along the seams, its flap fastened with a loop of sinew and a small pebble. It opens not into chaos, but order and arrangement of tools nestled in specific pockets like a surgeon's kit from long before hospitals existed. You're holding a Stone Age toolkit. It's not the crude bundle you might expect. Inside are flakes of flint sorted by size, a bone awl sharpened to a fine point, tiny wedges of pitch wrapped in bark, and a scrap of hide stiffened with age. Every piece has a role. This is someone's mobile workshop, their survival lab, their multi-tool pouch for every contingency. What's striking isn't just the tools, but how deliberately they're arranged. This isn't random. It suggests curation someone knew exactly what they'd need and where each piece belonged. Some scholars believe these toolkits were deeply personal, shaped by daily habits, terrain, or trade. Others think they were communal, shared among groups passed between travelers, like a communal spice rack of technology. Inside one famous pouch found in a bog, researchers discovered over a dozen different flint types, some traced to regions hundreds of miles apart. That's not just convenience, it's connection. Whoever owned it moved, traded, or bartered far beyond their home ground. Their kit tells a story, not just of need, but of network. Even more curious are the items that seem redundant. 2 nearly identical scrapers, 3 fire-starting stones, a broken needle with a spare tip. These weren't mistakes. They were backups, insurance against loss or breakage. It reveals a mindset familiar to modern travelers: always carry a spare. And among the practical, there's sometimes the sentimental: a polished pebble, a carved bead, a tiny shell painted with ochre, not necessary, not useful, but tucked alongside the essentials. Perhaps they were tokens from a loved one, or reminders of home or charms against the unknowable. The pouch itself too holds secrets. Some were made from hide, others from woven plant fibers or stitched bark. A few rare finds feature fur-lined interiors, suggesting concern not just for function, but comfort, even preservation. In cold climates, brittle tools could crack if left unprotected. These kits weren't just about access, they were about care. Archaeologists still debate whether these kits reflected individual identity. Were they crafted for one person with favorite tools and familiar pieces, or were they impersonal, like shared lockers passed around? The variation between kits suggests both some were bare bones, others ornate. Some show heavy use, others seem almost ceremonial. One particularly odd: find a leather roll containing 5 tools, each carved with the same zigzag pattern. The roll was buried beside a young adult with no visible injuries. Was it their kit A gift, or something symbolic offered by those they left behind? As you roll the pouch shut and fasten the loop again, you realize this isn't just storage. It's a portrait of a person, their choices, their movements, their daily rituals tucked in soft leather folds. And in this quiet moment, you carry their legacy on your hip. The tiniest chip of wood skitters across your palm light, harmless but important. It's not a blade, not yet. But in smaller hands it might as well be. Around the fire, a child picks up a flake and mimics the motions of the adult's lips pursed in imitation, eyes narrowed with theatrical seriousness. Children's first tools weren't ceremonial gifts or playthings from a Stone Age toy aisle. They were practiced safely doled, smaller in scale, but shaped by the same materials, the same methods. And they reveal something tender beneath the survivalist sheen of prehistory, a culture of teaching, of learning by doing, and of patience measured in bandaged thumbs. Imagine a child's toolkit: a bark pouch with flint shards too blunt to cut a stubby awl, maybe a piece of antler worn smooth from handling. These weren't powerful tools, but they were real, because learning to nap, carve, and wrap sinew wasn't optional, it was essential. By the time you were tall enough to see over the fire pit, you were expected to contribute, or at least not cause a medical emergency. What's remarkable is how often these early tools show signs of guidance. Many have half-finished edges or odd flake scars suggesting they were reshaped by adults mid-lesson. Some have experimental markings, zigzags that don't go anywhere, pierced holes that miss the center. They're not mistakes, they're milestones, the first attempts at mastery. And yet, archaeologists can't agree on when play became practice. Some argue that children simply absorb skills by proximity, like learning a song from overhearing it 100 times. Others believe instruction was deliberate elders guiding young hands correcting flake angles or helping wrap sinew with steadier fingers. Sites with clusters of juvenile tools suggest these weren't isolated experiments, but part of a shared intergenerational rhythm. In one site, a miniature blade too small for real use was found tucked beside a child's grave, not sharp enough to hunt, not long enough to scrape, but shaped, smoothed, and hafted with care. A teaching tool, a gift, a proud project offered as legacy. There's no definitive answer, but the gesture lingers. It's also likely that risk was part of the lesson. Many early tools were still dangerous, even in smaller sizes. But instead of keeping children away, communities may have embraced a form of supervised danger, teaching caution not by avoidance, but by contact. Let them cut themselves once lightly, and they'll remember forever. A curious detail: some child-sized tools have better symmetry than adult-made ones. Were they retouched by a teacher, or do small hands make better fine adjustments? Some researchers lean toward the former parents tidying up after messy flakes, like rewriting a child's drawing before hanging it on the cave wall. As the child beside you huffs with concentration, gripping their first flake too tightly, you sense something deeper than skill. It's inheritance not of things, but of ways. The knowledge passed without fanfare, carried not in books or scrolls, but in calloused hands and quiet encouragement. You reach for your blade ready to work and pause. Not because it's dull, but because there's a smear of red on the edge. Not ochre, blood, yours. Even now you instinctively recoil, shaking your hand and muttering something wordless. The cut is shallow, but you feel it in your bones, not just the pain, but the superstition. Among early toolmakers, blood on a fresh blade wasn't just unfortunate, it was bad luck. Stone Age safety measures weren't documented, of course, but evidence suggests they were very real, very practical, and sometimes very strange. You imagine slipping a crude glove over your fingers, scraped hide, maybe lined with fur tied with sinew to protect from flake shards and misjudged strikes. These weren't factory-made mitts, but they did the job. Safety wasn't a luxury. It was necessity. Strategic cuts in hides or wraps around palms helped redistribute pressure, absorb impact, and prevent deep wounds. Those who worked with obsidian especially had to be cautious. Its blades sharper than scalpels and just as unforgiving. A careless grip could mean a severed tendon. So tools weren't just built carefully, they were handled with intention. But protection wasn't always physical. There were beliefs too. Taboos, rituals. Blood on a new blade might be seen as spoiling its spirit or activating it depending on the region. Some groups may have marked tools with ash or spit before first use as a kind of insurance. Others possibly avoided looking directly at certain edges, as if meeting the tool's gaze could turn unlucky. Some archaeologists argue these customs were symbolic early forms of workplace culture, superstition blended with observation. If too many people cut themselves on new blades, the group might establish a taboo to prevent it. It wasn't nonsense. It was adaptive behavior with a hint of theater. One curious find: a pair of gloves buried beside a napper's toolkit, worn, patched, and clearly used. Their presence suggests that hand protection was not just a modern afterthought. It was a core part of the job. Still, not all safety came from gear. The way a tool was shaped could determine how safe it was to use. Rounded grips, thumb rests, tapered edges. Some scrapers were intentionally dulled on one side, not for laziness, but for control. You could press with your palm without risking a slice. A thoughtful touch honed through hard-earned experience. Children especially were likely protected not by armor, but by limitation. Smaller flakes, lighter tools, thicker wraps. Teaching them where not to touch was as important as showing them how to strike. Accidents still happened, but the archaeological record shows surprisingly few serious hand injuries and remains, suggesting they knew what they were doing. There's even speculation that some tools were tested in stages used on bark or hide before bone or flesh, a way of easing into risk learning through safer practice before the real cut. You look at your wound again. It's already clotting, nothing dramatic, but the instinct remains. You wrap your hand in hide more ritual than remedy and offer the blade a narrow glance. Whether it's science habit or just ancient muscle memory, you feel better for it. A different kind of edge waits in your satchel, less for cutting meat, more for shaping memory. This blade isn't for hunting, it's for art. Yes, even in the Stone Age, not all tools were made for survival, in the literal sense. Some were made for beauty, for meaning, for something closer to soul than stomach. You run your fingers along the blunt back scraper. Its edge is rounded, its shape awkward, unless you consider its purpose carving into cave walls. You move to the far side of the shelter, where the stone darkens into a gentle curve. Marks already whisper across its surface lines, dots animal outlines. This is no random graffiti. These are stories, warnings, rituals, or just expressions of wonder. And the tools that made them. They weren't accidents of spare time. Scrapers' burins and incised flakes were used to outline mammoths, deer handprints, and spirals. Some carved into limestone, others shaved away soot or packed clay to create contrast. The process wasn't fast. Hours, even days, went into a single panel. Blades dulled from effort, their points softened by repetition. They weren't efficient, but they were effective. One school of thought suggests these art tools had ceremonial significance, used only during certain moon phases, or held by specific individuals, shamans, elders, or the skilled. Another view says they were communal, passed around like brushes in a workshop, each hand adding to the vision. The tools themselves rarely survive with decoration, but some show unusual shaping as if their very form was part of the act. And then there's the question of intent. Was this art for art's sake, or were the carvings functional, part of rituals, hunting magic, or teaching aids? Some researchers suggest cave art helped groups track seasons' migrations or even bloodlines. Others see it as symbolic storytelling. A mammoth rendered in profile might not just say, "We saw this, but we honor this. We fear this. We remember." An odd example. One flint tool found deep in a French cave bears wear marks only on one side, likely from repeated scraping of a concave surface. Its angle suggests it was held sideways, almost awkwardly to reach tight spaces. Found beside it, a torch stick charred at both ends. Someone had gone deep into the cave blade in hand to draw in darkness. The tools used for art weren't necessarily different from hunting tools, but their purpose changed them. A blade used to carve a horse into stone feels different than one that gutted a boar. The edge carries memory, and that memory clings to its surface. You pick up a nearby flake and begin to mimic the marks pressing softly into the dirt wall. It's clumsy, the line wobbles, but it connects you across time to someone who once sat here too. Someone who saw more than food and fire and stone. Someone who carved for the sake of being seen. And whether their work was admired, feared, or just forgotten, it remains. Silent, patient, etched into time with tools no one expected to last this long. Not every blade you see today was born nearby. Some shine with a foreign gleam, their stone unfamiliar, darker, smoother, or just different from local flint. You recognize the contrast instantly. This blade was traded. Tool trading, it turns out, was one of humanity's earliest economies. Long before, coins jingled in pockets, blades passed from hand to hand, traveling across valleys, forests, even deserts. Some were exchanged at seasonal gatherings. Others were carried for generations, eventually gifted, bartered, or buried far from their place of origin. You pick up a narrow obsidian blade. Its surface is glassy sharp as betrayal. This stone doesn't occur here. It came from volcanic terrain, maybe hundreds of miles away. Someone had to carry it, protect it, and decide it was worth more than anything they left behind. What made a tool desirable in trade? Sometimes it was quality exotic stones like obsidian or chalcedony offered sharper, more durable edges. Sometimes it was rarity materials only found in distant lands signaled status or mystery. A blade from afar wasn't just useful, it was impressive. A flex, if you will. Some scholars believe these tools functioned as prestige items, the Stone Age equivalent of designer handbags or high-end tech. If your toolkit included a glinting obsidian scraper from a volcanic range no one had ever seen, that said something about you, your reach, your reputation, your connections. Others argue the trade was more utilitarian. A tribe lacking good local stone would naturally seek it from elsewhere, just as one might trade fish for grain. In this model, tools weren't just bartered. They were lifelines exchanged with purpose and urgency. But not all traded tools were kept intact. Some were broken deliberately. Snapped into halves or thirds, they may have been split as offerings, or to distribute resources more widely. One theory posits that breaking a blade symbolically neutralized it before trade removing its personal essence before handing it over, like wiping a phone before giving it away. One curious discovery involved a toolkit buried with an individual who had tools from 5 different regions. Some theorize he was a trader or a traveler. Others suggest he was simply lucky. Or unlucky. It's hard to say he's not talking. The showiness of some tools is also telling. Notched edges, polished handles, carved antler sheaths. These weren't features of function alone. They were meant to impress, to catch the eye. A buyer, perhaps. Or a rival. There's still debate over how standardized these exchanges were. Were there set values? Was 3 blades for a deer hide a fair deal, or did haggling rule the day? Did tribes have brands of sorts, styles, or flake patterns that marked origin or maker? You pass the blade between your fingers. Its edge is cool and silent. Somewhere far from here, someone chipped this into being. They never met you. But now you hold their work. And whether you'll use it, trade it, or pass it along yourself, that's part of the story still being written. The grave is shallow, just a hollow in the earth, lined with soft moss and a few flat stones. Inside, among bones curled like sleep, lies a blade worn smooth at the handle, its edge dulled by time, not use. This tool didn't outlive its owner. It followed them. Stone Age graves rarely shout. They whisper. And when they do, it's often through the tools buried within. A flint scraper beside the hand, a bone awl laid across the chest. Sometimes one tool, sometimes many, but always placed with intention, as if the dead might still need them, or still be defined by them. You kneel beside this ancient resting place and run your fingers over the hafted blade. It's not ornate, not flashy, but its grip is grooved from years of use, the blade slightly chipped at the base. This wasn't ceremonial. This was someone's favorite. A tool that fed them, clothed them, perhaps defended them. Now it lies here as a final companion. Scholars argue over what these grave goods mean. Some suggest they're purely practical, a way to equip the dead for whatever journey comes next. Others say they reflect status high-quality tools for respected individuals or specialized items that spoke to one's role in the group. Still others believe these were love offerings, a spouse's flake, a parent's scraper, buried alongside the one they'd outlived. One puzzling case involved a woman buried with 2 perfect blades, both unused, their edges pristine, their halves clean. Were they symbolic gifts, or did she simply never get to use them? The mystery lingers. Some graves even include broken tools, not damaged from time, but snapped cleanly in 2 before burial. Some researchers propose this was intentional symbolic acts to release the tool from its service, or perhaps to share part of it with the living. one half above ground, one below. There's also variation across regions. In some cultures, tools were placed only with men. In others, women's graves show equal craftsmanship. Children, too, were sometimes buried with mini tools, suggesting their identities or at least their potential were already acknowledged. Oddly enough, some of the most sophisticated tools ever found come not from living sites, but from graves. This raises a question: were the best blades saved for the afterlife? Or did the act of death call forth a different kind of craftsmanship, honoring someone with a tool made not for use, but for memory? You press your thumb against the old flint. It doesn't cut, it's too worn for that, but it carries weight. You wonder who last held it, whether they sharpened it before they died, whether someone else placed it here with trembling hands. In this quiet grave surrounded by earth and time, the blade doesn't speak, but it's there. A final chapter in a life shaped by stone. A reminder that sometimes what we make outlasts us not as monuments, but as small, useful things that once mattered enough to bury. The story doesn't end with stone. It begins again in myth. Long after the last flake was struck and the final edge honed, early communities told tales of where blades came from. Not from rock, but from gods, from the sky, from stories passed between generations woven tighter than sinew. You sit beside the fire and listen as an elder speaks. Their voice is slow, practiced, shaped by tradition. The first knife, they say, fell from the moon. It split a tree in half and sang the name of the first hunter. Around the circle, no one laughs. This is not entertainment. This is origin. Oral traditions often explain tools not as inventions, but as gifts. Divine spears that chased down lightning, daggers that whispered in dreams, flint that grew in sacred hills only the brave could climb. Each culture had its own version. And in the absence of writing, these stories carried more than whimsy, they carried belief, purpose, even law. Some archaeologists believe these myths helped organize society. If only certain people could receive a sacred blade, then roles like hunter-healer or carver were justified by more than skill. They were chosen. Others suggest the myths were metaphors, a way to explain hard-won knowledge without breaking it into boring steps. Napping becomes listening to the stone. Sharpening becomes waking the blade. But not every myth is majestic. One culture tells of a man who stole fire and was punished by being given stone instead. Another tells of a bird that dropped a flint core onto a mountain, and how the people who found it never went hungry again. These stories range from epic to oddly funny. A tale from a coastal group involved a jealous fish who taught humans to carve hooks so they'd stop stealing from his rivers. Morals may vary. What's consistent, though, is reverence. In many of these myths, tools are alive, or nearly so. They choose their owners. They grow jealous or dull if mistreated. One legend tells of a blade that refused to cut unless the user sang to it first. Another describes a flake that broke because it disliked the hand holding it. Whether anyone believed these literally is hard to say. But what's clear is that the myths gave tools emotional depth. They weren't just dead objects. They had backstories, moods, even grudges. And in that storytelling, you see a reflection of the people who made them, recognizing perhaps the power they had unleashed with every perfect strike. Some researchers wonder if these tales helped manage fear. Napping is dangerous. Blades can wound. Saying a tool has a will might be a way to explain accidents without blaming yourself. Or maybe it was simply a way to make work meaningful, to remind each new generation that the stone in their hand held more than edge. It held memory. So you listen, and when the tale ends, you feel something odd. Not belief, but understanding. You'll still sharpen your blade in silence, but somewhere in the back of your mind you'll wonder, what if it sings? You sit quietly now, the blade across your knees, firelight flickering against its dulled surface. It has done its work, cut, scraped, etched, sharpened, dulled again. You trace the flake scars along its side, feeling the rhythm of its making. But what lingers most isn't the tool, it's the memory it holds. Some archaeologists speak of use-wear analysis, a technique for studying how a blade was used based on its microscopic scratches. But even beyond science, there's something poetic in that idea that a tool remembers, that each chip, notch, and polish tells part of a story, that the stone itself holds a quiet biography. This concept isn't just modern interpretation. Many early cultures treated tools with a kind of respect that suggests they too sensed something more. A scraper that had shaped 100 hides might be given a name. A flint blade that had traveled far could be wrapped and tucked away like an heirloom. The line between object and companion blurred. One famous burial included a man interred with a single blade, one he had carried repaired, reshaped, and dulled over decades. It was no longer useful, but it had become part of him. A silent archive of his hands, his habits, his time on earth. You don't throw that kind of thing away. You lay it beside him, like a folded letter no one else will ever read. There's scholarly debate over whether early humans truly believed their tools were alive or if the language was symbolic. Some argue that animism, the belief that objects contain spirit, was a metaphor for connection. Others think it was literal. A chipped axe had moods. A broken scraper mourned its loss of purpose. What's undeniable is how many tools seem to have outlived their owners, passed down, buried, lost, and found again. Some show repairs layered atop repairs, different flaking techniques, overlapping like generational handwriting. One particularly moving find was a flint core reshaped 5 times across decades, eventually reduced to a pebble too small to use. But it was still kept in a pouch wrapped in fur like a relic. And that's what makes these tools so haunting. They weren't just solutions to problems. They were parts of people's lives, and sometimes deaths. You can feel it in their wear, the care, the adaptation, the occasional overconfidence. A blade tells the truth quietly but precisely. You hold yours a moment longer, thumb resting on the edge. It's not sharp anymore, but you can still sense its weight. Not just its grams, but its gravity. It has served, failed, returned. It remembers. And in that final thought, something shifts. You don't see the blade as a thing anymore. You see it as a witness. Not to grand battles or heroic myths, but to fireside chats, first lessons, small victories. The story of a hand shaping the world, one flake at a time. The fire has faded now. Its glow reduced to embers, casting long shadows over the stones. Around you, the silence of the ancient world settles gently like dust across old tools. Your hands are still the blade beside you, resting as if it too needs sleep. You've walked through a world built not with words or kings, but with chipped flint and quiet hands, each scar a sentence, each notch a memory. Let the stillness wrap around you like a fur cloak. The sinew is tight, the pitch has cooled, and the tools have done their work. The stories they told etched in edges carved in silence now fold into your dreams. If this slow journey through ancient edges brought you comfort tonight, you can always subscribe softly like setting a tool gently back in its pouch. Still awake? Maybe leave a sleepy emoji and tell me where you're listening from and what time it is there. Also, who or what should we explore next?